Your thoughts are not yours. The truth about your mind. Have you ever stopped to question whether your thoughts are truly yours? Most people go through life assuming that every idea, every worry, and every memory belongs to them. But what if that's not the case? What if your mind has been playing tricks on you this entire time? Your mind is like an open radio signal, constantly receiving thoughts from the world around you, your past experiences, your environment, the media you consume, and even the people you surround yourself with. And yet, you identify with these thoughts as if they are uniquely yours. But here's the truth. Thoughts arise, linger, and fade away, completely independent of your control. If you don't believe me, try this. Stop thinking for the next 10 seconds. What happened? Chances are your mind rebelled. The harder you try to silence your thoughts, the louder they became. That's because thoughts are not something you actively create. They simply happen. Recognizing this can be life-changing because it helps you realize something profound. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness watching them. Most people live under the illusion that they are the sole creators of their thoughts, that every opinion, fear, or idea that crosses their mind is uniquely theirs. But if that were true, why do so many of our thoughts feel repetitive? Why do certain memories or worries keep replaying, even when we don't want them to? Here's the truth. Thoughts behave like visitors in your mind. They arrive unexpectedly, linger for a while, and then disappear. But just because they pass through your mind doesn't mean they define you. Imagine you're sitting at a train station watching trains come and go. Each train represents a different thought. If a disturbing or negative thought appears, you don't have to hop on that train. You can simply watch it pass. The problem is, most people don't realize they have this choice. Instead, they identify with every passing thought, getting lost in its momentum. This is why so many people feel mentally exhausted. They spend their days reacting to every thought as if it's an undeniable truth. But what if you could step back and observe them instead? What if you could train yourself to watch thoughts without becoming attached to them? Think of your mind as a flowing river. Each thought is like a leaf floating on the surface. You can either grab onto every leaf that drifts by, inspecting it and letting it dictate your experience, or you can simply sit by the riverbank and watch them float past. The choice is always yours. The challenge is that most people don't recognize that they have this ability. Instead, they believe that if a thought appears, it must be important. It must mean something. But the reality is that the majority of our thoughts are noise, background chatter, replays of past conversations, worries about hypothetical scenarios, or borrowed ideas from social media, movies, and books. Another key realization is that our minds love familiarity. This is why we tend to think the same types of thoughts over and over. The brain is wired to recognize patterns and repeat them, even if those patterns are negative or unhelpful. This is why someone with anxiety often finds themselves worrying about the same things repeatedly, even if those worries never materialize. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Not only are thoughts temporary, but most of them aren't even original. Have you ever had an idea that felt groundbreaking, only to realize that someone else had the same thought before you? Or noticed how trends in beliefs and opinions spread like wildfire, as if everyone suddenly shares the same perspective? This is because our thoughts are deeply influenced by the external world, and very few of them arise independently. Thoughts are like echoes, bouncing around in the collective consciousness of society. They are shaped by news headlines, pop culture, advertisements, and even conversations you overhear in passing. Your mind absorbs this information, often without you even realizing it, and repackages it as your own. Here's a shocking truth. Your thoughts are not as original as you think. In fact, almost everything you believe to be an independent thought is actually a reflection of external influences. Your mind is constantly absorbing, processing, and recycling information, shaping it into what feels like unique ideas. But is it really? Think about it. From the moment you were born, your mind has been shaped by everything around you: your parents, teachers, media, culture, and society. You were taught what is right and wrong, what success looks like, what happiness means, and even what kind of life you should aspire to live. These ideas weren't ones you arrived at independently. They were given to you, instilled in you through repetition, reinforcement, and conditioning. But if your thoughts are simply reflections of the world around you, who or what is actually doing the thinking? Consider how ideas spread like wildfire. A phrase, trend, or belief can take over entire populations almost overnight. A particular way of thinking, whether about success, relationships, or self-worth, becomes mainstream, influencing millions. Suddenly, everyone is talking about the same thing, worrying about the same issues, aspiring to the same goals. Is that coincidence? Or is it evidence that thought is not as personal as we assume? This isn't just about social trends. Even our most deeply held beliefs, our morals, fears, desires, and ambitions, are not as self-generated as we like to think. They've been shaped by the stories we've been told, the experiences we've had, and the information we've been exposed to. And because the human brain is wired to recognize patterns and reinforce familiarity, the more we hear something, the more likely we are to accept it as truth. This is why marketing is so powerful. Advertisers understand that if they expose you to a message enough times, you'll internalize it, you'll begin to believe it. The same principle applies to politics, cultural values, religious doctrines, and even personal identity. When a particular idea is repeated enough, whether on the news, in movies, in schools, or on social media, it embeds itself into your mental framework. You don't have to consciously choose to believe it. The mere act of exposure makes it feel like your own thought. Now take a step back and consider this. If thoughts spread, evolve, and replicate like this, what does it actually mean to be an individual thinker? Are we ever truly original in our thinking, or are we just rearranging the same ideas in slightly different ways? Many spiritual teachers suggest that the mind is not actually a creator of thoughts, but a receiver, like a radio, tuning into different frequencies of ideas. In this view, thoughts don't originate in your brain. They exist in a larger field of collective consciousness, and your mind simply picks up on the signals. Some scientists even explore similar ideas through the lens of cognitive science and psychology, arguing that human thought is largely an interplay of memories, associations, and external stimuli rather than genuine independent creation. This raises a powerful question. If we are constantly recycling and adopting thoughts from outside sources, how much of our identity is truly ours? If most of our thoughts are absorbed rather than created, what can we do about it? The answer isn't to reject all thoughts, but to question them, to become more aware of where they come from and whether they actually serve us. The next time you find yourself holding a strong belief, ask yourself, where did this thought originate? Have I truly questioned it? Or have I simply absorbed it without scrutiny? What alternative perspectives exist that I haven't considered? These simple questions can be uncomfortable at first because they challenge the foundation of what you think you know, but they are essential for breaking free from unconscious conditioning. For example, suppose you believe that success means working long hours, making lots of money, and climbing the corporate ladder. Ask yourself, who told me this was the definition of success? Is this what I truly want, or have I been conditioned to think this way? What if success could look completely different? More about freedom, creativity, or balance? Or if you feel deeply insecure about your appearance, ask, where did this standard of beauty come from? Who benefits from me feeling this way? What would I think about myself if I had never been exposed to social media, advertisements, or beauty norms? By actively questioning your mental patterns, you begin to see how much of your identity has been shaped by external influences. This doesn't mean you have to reject every belief or thought you have, but it does mean you can choose which ones you want to keep. The key to mental freedom is learning to observe your thoughts without blindly accepting them. Instead of assuming every thought you have is true, start treating them like suggestions, things you can examine, Accept, modify, or discard as needed. To develop this skill, try incorporating these habits into your daily life. Practice mental distancing. When a thought arises, imagine stepping back and looking at it from an outsider's perspective. Is it useful? Is it valid? Or is it just another conditioned response? Question your automatic beliefs. If you have a strong emotional reaction to something, pause and ask yourself why. What belief is driving that reaction? Is it truly yours, or is it something you've absorbed from society? Expose yourself to new perspectives. Seek out alternative viewpoints, even if they challenge your current beliefs. Read books, listen to different opinions, and engage in conversations with people who think differently than you. Detach from thought identity. Remind yourself, I am not my thoughts, I am the observer of them. This simple shift in awareness can transform how you relate to your mind. When you start to detach from your thoughts, you create space for something deeper, an awareness that goes beyond the constant mental noise. You begin to see thoughts for what they really are: fleeting, conditioned, and often unreliable. This realization is incredibly liberating. It means you are not bound by your mental patterns. You don't have to believe everything your mind tells you. You can choose which thoughts to engage with and which ones to let go of. And that, in itself, is a form of freedom. Because once you understand that most thoughts are simply echoes of the world around you, you gain the power to reshape your mind, to step outside of automatic thinking and start consciously creating your own reality. The journey to understanding your mind is not about stopping thoughts altogether. It's about changing your relationship with them. When you realize that you are not your thoughts, you take the first step toward true mental freedom. Your mind is an incredible tool, but it is just that, a tool. It is not your identity, nor is it the source of your true self. The moment you detach from the constant mental noise, you begin to experience life with greater clarity, peace, and awareness. So the next time a thought arises, take a step back, observe it, question it, and then let it go. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. See you in the next one.